Honeymoon. Boy, I don't even know where to start. It's just crazy. My nerves are like fried at this point. But oh, well, let's start with the solar eclipse. And then we went to lunar eclipse and then the Mercury retrograde. And what is it? What is another retrograde that's happening? It's just so much. And the world, the universe, everything. It's a lot. It's a lot going on. So if you've been feeling, where do I start? Exhausted? Burnt out? Okay. I've been sleeping like nobody's business. This was like maybe last 2 weekends. I thought I was like a 7-year-old. I slept for 11 hours straight. And I don't even want to get out of bed. It's just like, I don't know. I don't want to face the world for some reason. I'm just being brutally honest with you. I'm tired. And for many good reasons, but I think for a lot of us who are tapped in and connected and channeling, and I don't want to always use the word like empaths because then we just kind of limit our possibilities too. But let's say empaths goes into this bucket too. And all of us sensitives, all of us who care, been under tremendous amount of fatigue. And you could call it compassion fatigue. You can call it empath fatigue, empathy fatigue. But I think it's the umbrella term is the burnout. Basically, the umbrella term is the burnout in psychology, and there are subcategories based on that. So empathy fatigue often happens to people who are truly feeling what's happening in the world. They feel it viscerally in their bodies. I'm one of those people. I actually do feel people's energies. So I'm feeling it. And then I have on top of it, I have a compassion fatigue, because being compassionate means you don't just feel it, but then you try to think of ways to help the situation, do something about it. You got to go out there and try something, right? So I'm always thinking, always reading. If a client asks me a question, I'll be like, okay, I need to research this. But then if there's traumatic events happening, what can I do? Right? So it starts from the prayers to tuning into the people, tuning into the losses. But then I'm trying to think of ways to how can I get myself involved so that we can alter, change frequencies, vibrations. So there's the empath fatigue and being empathic, and also compassion fatigue. Then you basically go into this place of burnout where it's not a good place to be, because this is when you start to feel, I just can't care anymore. I want to care, and I deeply did care, but I don't have the inner resources to do much more. So Chris will go into much more details about the burnout, but it's this inability to muster up your own resources. Does that make sense? Your bucket is empty. And my bucket is like, has holes in it. That kind of a feeling, right? So then you try to go patch your holes, but that seems to be happening constantly. So, I think it's okay to be honest, right? It's okay that we come together and just say, are we at that point? Maybe some of you a little less degree, and maybe some of you more. I don't know. Chris had spent years working with first responders, police officers, some of the firefighters, and they are full on burnout too. And when you're at that point of you don't have any more inner resources, it becomes very difficult to make so-called the right choices also. And so, this is when we need to pause, stop, and acknowledge. And for me, it was like, I need to just sleep. I just need to sleep. And I can't I can't answer people's questions, emails anymore. I just need to sleep. So I did a lot of that. And hopefully many of you are doing that for yourself. And this doesn't even involve the cosmic energy shifts. That last lunar eclipse, many of you saw it if you lived in the United States or, North America area. I think some parts of Canada, Mexico, maybe you were able to see that too. But it was so powerful. The residual impact from that lunar eclipse is still reverberating inside us. A major gate opened, maybe a floodgate opened. It's still pretty intense. So if you felt off kilted, maybe you felt ungrounded. And since you've been slowly finding your grounds, that's actually very much in alignment with what I'm feeling. But I think a lot of us who are tuned in, tapped into the energetic fields are feeling too. So number one, please don't feel like you're alone in this. And we will share what we can to help you in what I'm doing, what Chris is doing, what we've done as a couple, but how we've been helping clients and what Chris has done in his previous work, working with the police officers and how to help with their mental health and their energies. He will be sharing some of that. So before we go any further, and then I'll be asking you a little questions on the chat after this, but I'd love for all of you to just kind of come home, okay? Tune into your body. This is something I learned from a teacher in Japan. He has been a very influential figure in my life. I met him in my early 20s when he took one look at me, and he's a healer, he's a chiropractor, he's a physician, and he was tuning into my prana, which is your life force. And he said, I don't really know how you walked into my office because your prana is below 40%. And I said, I don't know what that means. He said, it means that it's a miracle that you even came here. It's pretty bad, he said. So he said, I will help you till you get up to about 60%. Then after that, you have to work on yourself. But he said, I'll help you till you can get up to your 60% prana, which is your life force, your energy, chi, ki, those words, right? So I'd love for you to just close your eyes, tune into yourself. We all have an internal measurements. Okay, we have our own internal barometer. See if you could find that within you. Usually sits near the heart center, could sit a little bit below between the third and the fourth chakra area. It might have numbers on there. It might have like an old style gauge, it could look like a gas gauge. See what pops in your head, or maybe a number will pop in your head and something will say, oh, I'm about 55%, or yeah, I'm hovering around 63%. You might see the gas gauge almost empty. Just see where you're at today. Because the number one step in understanding and how to help yourself is to know where you're at today. How are you doing in terms of your sleep, energy? Do you have anxieties? Do you get irritated easily? Do you get triggered easily? Those are the signs that your inner resources are starting to get used up. Could be chemical triggering, like you walk through, I call it the toxic aisle in the grocery stores where they sell all the cleaning products. How do you respond to that aisle? I do not respond well to that aisle. How about some of the news that we've been getting? How's that? How much of that zapping your energy? How's your digestion? Are you experiencing more constipation, maybe diarrhea, bloating, blood sugar roller coaster, up and down with your energies, needing some coffee in the afternoon? Can't fall asleep. You may fall asleep, but you wake up in the middle of the night many times. You get up and you have no hunger in the morning. How are you interacting with your family members, friends, communities? Are you shutting down? And once you come back to your barometer again, check in again. Where is the needle pointing at? What gauge, what percentage? So acknowledging where you're at, naming it right now where you're at is very important. And then slowly opening your eyes and come back to the space. And feel free to share the numbers or maybe what you saw, maybe colors for some of you. Go ahead and put it in the chat so we are aware of the population that we're talking to today. Because, we don't want to be talking about burnout topic to people that are like, no, I have no idea what burnout means.
I don't get the sense that is who showed up today. So, yeah. So we got some numbers coming in. We have 43%, 25%, 30%. So currently on empty. 8%. So I don't know, maybe this is a good place for me to come in and talk about this. So 70%.
Well, wow. I mean, yeah, good. 78%. So I was going to say that the good place. So my mentor said, you have to have a minimum of 60% to like survive on this earth, he said. But you have to have 80% to thrive on this earth. Okay. So Linda, you said 78%, but that's not quite 80%. So I'm going to assume that you could do 2% more so you can become thriving human being, right? And there are two different circles. And after this, I will hand it over to Chris. 2 circles. And I would love for you to kind of maybe draw a circle on a piece of paper if you're taking notes. First circle says survival. Okay. You're just basically surviving. The other circle is thriving. So most people will come and see us or work with us because they are having issues with, well, I would say it's both, but they have a wish list of thriving wish, right? They want to get pregnant easily. They want to have a really much better hormonal balance, right? They want to be able to sleep through the night. They want to have a lot more energy, no more brain fog. That's what they want, but they are basically in the survival mode. The survival mode for the body is pretty simple in a way. It's like the body just wants to be on this earth. So it wants to make sure your brain is operating around 65% capacity. Your heart is operating just enough so you're not going to, be done with your heart, right? You're digesting just enough so that you can get some little bit of a nutrients, but you're going to have gas and bloating and distensions and diarrhea and constipations and irritable bowel syndrome and small intestinal bacterial overgrowth and all kinds of lovely stuff, right? So the survival is really limited. Okay. This is when your hormones are wacky. This is when you want to get pregnant, but you can't. This is when you want to sleep through the night, but you can't. This is when you want to heal from your injuries or surgeries, but your healing is very slow. Long COVID, things like that is in a survival mode. We all want to get to the thriving mode. But the thriving mode is when your hormones doing great. You sleep through the night. You wake up refreshed. You have a nice hunger within an hour of waking up. Your brain can take on lots of information. You don't feel overwhelmed when I talk about the burnout subject. Okay. And you don't need the coffee to get through in the afternoon. That is thriving life. But do you know that many people that are in that circle of thriving? No. Okay. So it's number one, important to check in with your barometer. And you do that like 2 times per day. That's going to be your homework. First thing in the morning, after you do your tongue scraping, get the poop out of your mouth, right? Remember, That's poop on your mouth, in your mouth. Okay. You clean that up, drink some water, do a little bit of Tai Chi, breathing exercises, and you get going through the morning. Pause, get the sunlight, and say to yourself, what is my barometer saying? What is the percentage? Where's my gauge today? And then I want you to check in with yourself around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Set the clock on your phone or something and say, all right, where am I? Okay. How much have I used up? If you're starting with 28% and you've already used up 18%, I don't know how you can help your child get through his homework. Or some of you are, already in the summer vacation. So thank God for our winter vacation in the Southern Hemisphere. But you don't have a lot left. If you only have 10% of your prana left, you can't heal your body. You can't replenish your brain cells. You can't change your hormones. There's a lot of things that you will be doing with the down-regulated life. So everything becomes dialed down. Okay. Colors become more gray. Your whole body just feels gray. Brain fog, heart is not, feeling not great. So you don't want to go for a walk. Muscles feel achy and tired. So you always want to keep in mind, how much did I start with and where am I around 3 o'clock? And make sure you don't dip much more than where you started with. So it means that maybe you need to sit down, have a glass of water, add a little minerals to it, add a little pinch of sea salt, get your minerals back in your body. Okay. Did you have enough lunch? Did you digest lunch? Did you get bloaty and gassy and you needed the little snacks? Well, then go for betaine hydrochloric acid. Make sure you're digesting, things like that, right? So I think right now, everyone, right now, in the year of 2022, okay, in June and the rest of the year, but I sense till about August, particularly, we need to check in with our barometer as often as we can, because there's a lot going on in the world. Okay, it's not only on the personal level, but it's on the social level, it's on the cosmic level. There's a whole lot of reshuffling that's going on. Okay, so I'll hand it over to Chris.
Okay, well, like Masami said, this is something that is a topic near and dear to my heart and my brain, because not only has it been something that's impacted me personally in a very severe way, but it's also something that I've worked with people who are acutely affected by burnout. So Masami mentioned my previous role for the last several years was working with our state troopers and dispatchers for emergency services, our state firefighters, people like that. And like all of them, each of us is also profoundly impacted when a couple of things happen. One is when we'll call it the stress bucket that we all carry around with us is full to overflowing. And that accompanies what Masami mentioned, which is the inner resource bucket is basically either feels like it's emptied out, or it feels like it at least has a big hole in it that's leaking fast. And so it's hard to really feel like you're living in a state of equilibrium. It's hard to feel like you have enough energy, motivation, enthusiasm, interest to engage, not just to survive your day, but I mean that it's the icing on the cake when you can actually engage. Because when you get down into these stages of burnout, which I'm going to share some slides with you in a moment here, once you start getting stuck in that mud, it starts getting harder and harder to get out of it the longer that it persists. And so one of the things that you have often heard Masami talk about and me talk about when I've joined her is that these things take time to resolve. Okay, so I want to say that first. It takes time. It takes having the right targeted support. And I want to also reiterate that everything that we do on these Monday calls or on our other programs, everything that we do, either directly or indirectly, helps to support our bodies and our hearts and our minds and our spirits to help come back from these stages of burnout. Okay. So anything that you might do with us is also targeted at helping to recover from that process. So I'm just going to say a couple more quick things and then show you some slides here. One is that you have to remember, and this is something I'm going to give you a little teaser here, but we're in the process of developing a program for this fall where we're going to go into more depth on the brain and stress and how all of these factors overlap and impact and build on each other. And right now, so you've got something that you can chew on, it's very important to remember that burnout is physiological. So that means it's impacting the systems of your body on a chemical level. Okay, hormones, enzymes, stomach acid, blood pH, oxygen levels, all of those things are affected when you enter into this burnout slide. And it also, of course, affects your psychology and your state of mind, your mood, your emotions. So all of your systems get wrapped together. And this becomes important to understand that there's no difference. When we're looking at this as a body system, there's no way to separate the symptoms. Okay, we have to treat them as a whole system. And that's why I said a minute ago that all of our work is pointing toward assisting in this recovery, whatever direction we're coming from. So when we get into this state, we're basically depending on our backup systems. So if you imagine that you, instead of being plugged into an electrical outlet, you're now running on batteries. And sometimes your batteries can be recharged, but the hard thing is when your batteries get depleted down past a certain point, like Masami said, if you drop below that 60% or 40% level, it's much harder to recharge the battery, and it also takes much longer to recharge the battery, to bring it back up to an operating capacity. So that's a really important concept to understand here when we're talking about burnout. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen here, and just give me a second to do that. And this is something that we have talked about in other settings, and it's something that I have talked about quite a bit in my past work. So I'm going to be just touching on some broad themes here, and then Masami will probably come in here and there if she has some thoughts to say. But let's just talk about what these 5 stages of burnout are. And this is not absolute. These are 5 stages that have mostly come out of the research on psychology related to occupations. Okay, so the job-related, work-related, role-related burnout. But we can take this and we can extend this into our own personal lives because it's not limited to just work. You could say whatever role you're playing with intensity and that's taking up a lot of time and space in your life could be very similar to this pattern that we're talking about. Okay, so let's take a look at the very first stage when we're looking at burnout. Okay, the first thing, actually, my first slide, I forgot to mention this one. I alluded to this by saying that we have all these different factors in our lives that affect us. I mentioned the physiological, I mentioned the emotional, I mentioned the psychological, but this wheel of wellness, these dimensions of wellness that research identifies 8 of them, these are all things that we need to look after in our day-to-day lives. Because if we don't, we find that we actually are having them cause more stress and they're leading to more burnout in our lives. So if you just take a look at these are the ones that we talk about often, okay? Our physical well-being, emotional, intellectual, which is our ability to learn and grow and gain new skills, social interactions, our spiritual connections, our connections with the natural world, the environment, our work, our occupation, and of course, our finances. So when these things get out of balance or we stop looking at one of them enough, they also create stressors that lead to and contribute to this burnout cycle I'm going to talk about here. So the first stage that we're talking about is often referred to as the honeymoon phase or the honeymoon stage. And it's called that because it's something that we all experience when we're starting out something new. And so the later we get in our lives, probably the less of these we tend to have. But the honeymoon phase, we can apply it to a new job, a new role, a new task, something that we're just starting out on. And it reflects our motivation being high. We might be able to put a lot of energy and have high productivity. We really want to prove ourselves. We're really optimistic about where the outcome can go and what this can lead to. We're very creative and excited. And we also tend to have a high level of satisfaction around what we're doing and be very committed to it. So this is often typical of younger people, but also those of us as we age, we can still have this feeling in a new situation. But let's move on to the next one, because it's typical that we very quickly move on to this second stage, no matter where we're starting on the first stage from. So the onset of stress, just as soon as things become a little bit more difficult in our day-to-day lives, those nice things that were in that first stage start to fade out and we start to feel more stressed. And as that happens, we can notice these little growing indicators that our stress is increasing. And so if you take a look at some of these, I'm not going to read through this entire list, but if you look, I'm going to pull out a few of them that are, I think, very important. One is anxiety, because that's something we hear a lot about in our society today, is how many people are suffering anxiety more than ever before. But then we can see that things like irritability and inability to focus, lack of sleep or reduced sleep quality. Okay, these things are already happening at an early stage of this burnout cycle. So by the time we start feeling these symptoms, you might be having increased headaches, starting to feel more tired, losing track of things. I know for me, forgetfulness is one. That's a big indicator for me, is that things just fall out of my brain, like I didn't even hear them when I start to increase my stress burden. So if you notice here, these are not mild symptoms. They're actually things that are pretty significant, and we're only at the second stage. So let's go to the next one and see how this continues on as we go up the stress stages. So one thing I want to point out with this stage 3, which is called chronic stress, is that our energy levels are starting to be depleted to the point where it actually becomes a lot more appealing to reach for things that we might call energy crutches. So things like caffeine and sugar, and it might even be alcohol or tobacco or even drugs, including prescription drugs. And our body reaches for these things because it's starting to sense that it doesn't have sufficient internal resources to meet the challenges that are coming at you from your day-to-day life. Okay, so the stress bucket is now filling up to the point that it's setting off alarms in your body. And if you take a look at this list, you'll see again, we're taking that last one, the onset of stress, and we're now getting a little bit more intensified. So you're noticing apathy. You just stop caring as much. You might have more of your anger might get stirred up. Okay, Masami mentioned being triggered easily before. So it could come as lashing out at people or having a short fuse. You might start to feel like you need to protect yourself a little bit more, that sense of threat or panic, and feeling like things are starting to build up and get out of control for you. And this can push into how you behave around things. Like you might call into sick more, start missing work deadlines if you have those happening. You might not want to get out of bed in the morning or feel like you can't get out of bed in the morning. And you start to sort of put things off, procrastinate. You might start feeling a little bitterness and resentment toward things and people that are putting a demand on your time and energy. That could include your family, your friends, people you love and care about. And you also might feel like you want to escape or just kind of divert yourself into other activities where you don't have to think about your day-to-day stressors in life. So let's take a look as we go on to the more severe 4th and 5th stages, because up to this point, stage 3, this starts to really impact the quality of your life at stage 3. But it's also something that you can pull back from with the right kind of support and attention in your life. by paying attention to your energy levels, paying attention to your nutritional levels, your sleep, really taking care of your body and your digestion, all those things that we talk about all the time. So as we push past stage 3, what we're starting to get into is more of a chronic situation. Okay, so if we look at stage 4 now, what happens is the buildup reaches this point, and I'm saying it on this slide that it starts to redline. If you think of a car engine, there's that point where there's a little dial on the heat monitor of your engine, and it will actually start to redline, or the RPMs of your engine will start to redline past a certain point where it's getting into the critical zone. It can't sustain that kind of intensity. Okay, too hot, too fast for too long is going to result in damage. And so by the time you get to this point, not only are you noticing a big impact on your quality of life and your energy levels, but other people are probably starting to see it in you as well. Or if you're watching somebody else go through this, you will notice this with them. Because what we're starting to see now is systemic breakdown happening in your body, in your mind, in your psychological makeup, and how you're interacting with people and relationships. And so at this stage, it's not viable to carry on. You can't just do business as usual anymore. Because if you pretend like you just put your head down and say, mind over matter, I can do this, this is when you are heading towards serious illness. Okay, that's a sure way to get yourself headed towards serious illness, because burnout is something that we know causes inflammation in the body. Okay, the physiology side of burnout creates intensifying patterns of inflammation, and then that's where all of our disease conditions come from. So on this list, you can see basically a deepening of this pattern. So if it was bad before, it's starting to really get into a place now where it's becoming entrenched. So this is where we start seeing behavioral changes. You might see somebody's personality seems like it's changing. This is where the word chronic starts to show up more. Okay, you might get headaches. Maybe you got them every few months before. Now you might get them a few times a week. Okay, you might start having gut issues with digestion and just having constipation or diarrhea, things like that. You might feel like you don't even care enough about yourself to do basic hygiene or make sure you're eating, the neglect of what you need. Okay, so there's going to be a continuous push and pull for you to get away from what's going on, to pull away from people, from society, to isolate yourself, escape. And that creates a pattern that is also tied to depression, is that desire to kind of pull back and escape and get away from everything. So what happens here is that these patterns build on top of each other. Not only do you start feeling more and more impacted physically, physiologically, but you also start to feel like your ability to function in the world is really coming into question. And you start to doubt yourself. You start to feel like you don't have what it takes, or you're not good enough. Any of those kinds of thoughts that might have been in the background really start to get noisy as you get into this low energy, low inner resources state. Okay, so even at this point, it's getting pretty severe at this point in terms of symptom burden, but you can still pull back from it. Okay, there's still room to maneuver. It's going to take longer now than stage 3 to pull out of this, but there's still a way to pull out. And what we want to do is focus on this stage. Stage 4 is very important, because I'm going to go to the next one. And if we hit stage 5, which takes a long time to get to, by the way, you don't just jump to stage 5. We're talking now years, decades in the making to reach this stage. And when you get to stage 5, everything is chronic. And this is about your brain has now rewired itself to have this habitual pattern where you are so ingrained in all of these burnout modes that every aspect, physical, mental, emotional, psychological, everything in your whole being starts to just behave as if it's normal to be adapted to this horribly low resource, low energy, no motivation, no desire to engage, wanting to pull away from everything, your whole system starts to normalize that. And that's when the long-term damage is much harder to reverse. That doesn't mean it's impossible, but it's very entrenched at this point. So we want to make sure that we do everything we can to avoid getting to stage 5. Okay. If you identified where you are on this continuum here, on this spectrum, we don't want to reach this point of stage 5, but if you have, it just means that you have to take extra care of yourself. Okay. And so I'm going to stop sharing at this point. This gives you an overview of where we are, and don't despair if you find yourself at stage 5 today. I have been in stage 5. Okay. And it's something that takes time. That's it. You just have to tell yourself, I don't have to fix it today. I don't have to have all the answers today. It takes time. But we are going to talk about a few things that you can look at, because as you know, especially with Masami, but also with my work that I've done, it's so important to bring this back to your body and understand that that's where the change happens first.
Well, and then go ahead and put it on the chat. What stage do you think you are at right now? And I wanted to, while you're doing that, I'm going to actually share the screen of one of the things that I wanted to show you today.
That's coming up now.
It is?
Yep.
Okay. Well, that's strange. Okay. So do you see that the burnout stage 4?
Yep.
Okay. So everyone, you see that this is one of the examples of hair tissue mineral analysis. So if you've done hair tissue and your calcium and magnesium, those are the really high number ones you see. That's the calcium and magnesium. If that's really high, and sometimes people have really high cobalt, but some of them will have really high chromium also. But when we see these like a high numbers, particularly with the calcium and magnesium, we consider that to be about stage 4 burnout. And can you see this one? Next one, can you see it? Okay. So this is the burnout stage 5. And guess whose test this is? It's actually Chris's. Okay. This was Chris's test at stage 5. This was almost not quite a decade ago, huh, Chris?
Yeah, and this was actually after improving.
Improving tiny bit, tiny improvements. But what happens is that basically in stage 5, you're so exhausted and you've given everything you got that you are losing minerals. You pretty much don't have a lot left inside your system, particularly the first very important minerals, which are calcium, magnesium, sodium, that's the Na, and potassium K. So I just wanted you to visually see what we see with our clients and in ourselves, that we both were stage 5. And so felt like two very broken down people leaning on each other. I'll stop sharing now, but leaning on each other, because our numbers were so down, our hair tissue mineral analysis basically collapsed. So that's what stage 5 feels like. It's everything collapsing, right? So, okay, so we have a stage 3 and 4, stage 3, 5. What else? 5. Okay.
Lots of 3s, 4s, and 5s. And one thing I want to say too is that if you are living with somebody and you've been together for a long time, the odds are that you have very similar patterns. And it may look different in the symptoms, but this is something Masami and I have done lots of couples with these hair tissue mineral analysis lab tests. And oftentimes they are very much parallel to each other. They're very close, similar patterns. And so I want to say that what makes this challenging, and we'll talk more about this down the road in much more detail. But what I wanted to say is what Masami alluded to with compassion fatigue and empathy fatigue is, imagine that you are with somebody a lot of the time, or with several other people a lot of the time that are in this same advanced stage of burnout. If you're a 4 or a 5 and you have 4s and 5s around you in your life, in your social circle, in your family, at work, Imagine how much that puts more pressure and stress on everybody when you're all just straining to get by and irritated by every little thing that challenges your energy. And you're trying to get through just a normal day in your life. And it's so difficult. And
I might add that if you have a couple, like, so Chris and I were both basically stage 5 collapsing people. Okay. But usually one takes more responsibilities than the other, just so you know. You could be in stage 5 together, all collapsing, but somebody's got to pay bills, right? Somebody's got to go and, cook. Somebody has to go and do something. So then we are leaning on each other, but one is usually doing a little bit more of the work than the other. Okay. So that's when you feel like, yes, I'm stage 4 or 5, but I'm still acting like I'm in stage 3. Okay. That's because you're not quite realizing how exhausted you are, because you have to be the one that has to do these things or your household is going to collapse. Okay. That's often what happens in the group setting or in a couples setting. So I just want you to know that. Yeah.
So Diana mentioned that the saying that you become like the 5 people you're around the most. It's not just a saying. There's actually research that's been done on this that shows that even, I think it's out to 5 to 7 degrees of separation in terms of circles of friends. So it's like your friends, your friends' friends, your friends' friends' friends, and so on, 5 to 7 circles out can actually influence your daily experience. That's how connected we are as human beings. So I think if I could just say, Masami, really quick, I see you've got something, but what we really want to draw your attention today is one, that you're experiencing some degree of this, okay? To acknowledge that for you, with you, because we are. And so we want to make sure that we're just acknowledging and giving you some language so that you can identify where you are or where other people close to you might be. Because again, I was about to say this a minute ago, is that it makes it very difficult when you're burned out to have compassion. But even with that said, when you start to see that you have burnout symptoms and you can see that other people close to you have burnout symptoms, it allows you to say, oh, they're not just being unhelpful. They're not just being a jerk. It's actually a deeper issue, and we're all having to deal with that. So how can we come together? How can we help each other out? And that's something, Masami was alluding to with us, is she definitely carried the weight for both of us for a while. And it was something that is very hard on her. I know it was. And that's something that as we become aware of what's driving these patterns, that can help us become more engaged and educated about how to help each other out, how to pull ourselves up, how to support each other. And then I'll read that quote you just put up, Masami, from David White. The antidote to exhaustion is not rest. It's wholeheartedness. Okay. The antidote to exhaustion is not rest. It's wholeheartedness. So,
and I think what I connect with David White's quote of wholeheartedness is that when you begin to realize that, wow, we are these herds of people occupying this earth after 2 years of pandemic and so many wars going on, and individually what we're all experiencing, cosmically we're being influenced. So many of us look around, we're all in some stages of burnout. Okay, some stages, whether it's 2, 3, 4, or 5, we are. So when you recognize that, and when Chris and I started to understand the hair tissue mineral analysis better, and we started to understand the signs and symptoms of what people are experiencing better, what I tell you, like what I've learned from all that is true compassion. I actually finally understood that this guy wasn't just trying to be an A, you know what, right? And this lady wasn't being such a you know what. And I started to understand that, oh my gosh, my dad wasn't just trying to be horrific towards me. He was at stage 5 burnout for decades. And that's why he couldn't engage with me in the way I wanted him to. Like, I started to really, it helped me to forgive people, everyone. When I understood what forgiveness meant through the lens of burnout symptoms, I finally got it. I finally said, I can't just label them and say, you son of a who knows what, I just wanted to go, you are horrible people. I don't want to be around you, or, why are you acting like this? I used to feel that way, and I'm agitated, they're agitated, but now I can sit back and say, and I go, I wonder what their hair tissue looks like, or how much of their minerals are they losing? Are they able to sleep through the night? Oh, they probably can't because their blood sugar is all over the place. Like, I can start to understand them, feel into them. And I also have to be careful, because if I get too compassionate and then I try to come up with solutions for them, then I go into compassion fatigue. And Chris has to sometimes pull back, because for some reason or another, I don't know, I go to grocery stores, any stores, and people start telling me their issues, like checkout people, they just start telling me, because I could see them and I go, are you doing okay? And they're like, I'm not doing okay. And they start telling me as they're, going through the groceries or at the post office. I know everybody at the post office. Like, first name basis, they love me because I listen to their crap every time I go in there. So Chris has to pull me back sometimes and say, I'm going to go to the post office. You're not going, because your compassion fatigue is up to here, and you're going to sit there and you're going to come up with the solutions. I even bring supplements for my postal guys because they're so stressed out. It's ridiculous. So, Chris has to be like, no, you're not doing that. I'm going to do it. But the reason why we're sharing this is not to pull back on your own personal judgments towards yourself and your own criticism, but stop and say, you know what? Maybe this person is walking on this earth at stage 4 burnout. And no wonder this person cannot take on any more information from me. They're not willing to listen to my suggestions. No wonder they can't, show up fully for me. And you will begin to notice that. And Sharon, you said, I live by myself, and then, and no one else can hold things together. What are some of the things that basically what you can look for? I think when you could get really triggered by news, or you start to get very anxious about things or frustrated about things, those are the things that it's your body way of saying, I'm getting close to the burnout 4. Be careful, turn off things, just go for a nature walk, sit by your favorite tree, do something to really ground yourself, but be one with the nature, so irritation is a big one, big one.
I wanted to say one thing to that too, because Sharon, I saw that comment as well. And one of the things, this is just a little teaser here, but this is something that the research shows that if you're by yourself, one thing that can be helpful is actually to go and be around other people. And so you don't have to even engage with them. So if you're feeling like you don't have the energy to have a conversation, just go somewhere where other people are. So it could be a park, or it could be a cafe, somewhere where you can just sit. You can be by yourself still, but it's just being in the presence of other people can actually help your system to regulate and come back to more of that dynamic equilibrium, that energy level that you need to have what your body requires. And so just that's one little tip that you can take. But it's a very important question. And there is another one that popped up on the chat I wanted to mention. Oh, it's from Mary about assuming this translates to work. Okay, Mary, this completely translates to work. In fact, most of the research on burnout is from work settings. What we're trying to do is extend it to beyond the work settings. And that's a big part of what my past work was to show people that you are a human being first. And regardless of what hats you're wearing, what roles you're playing at any given time, you are still drawing from the same resource pool. Okay. So it's absolutely related to work. And if you're somebody that feels like your team is relying on you all the time, or like you're one of those super performers and you don't show how much of a cost that's taking out of you, that's something that is very common. Okay. I put myself in that category. Masami is definitely somebody that fits in that category of taking on too much. And then other people assume that we're okay because we make it look easy to them, that we somehow juggle a lot of things. But really what it's doing is it's just taking it out of our inner resources. So we have to get good at recognizing when we're pushing too hard and when we're asking too much of ourselves, and ask help from other people. Realize, like Masami was saying, the compassion fatigue has another component, which is if you are in stage 4 and 5 burnout, it's hard to receive because you can't take one more thing. So somebody with all good intentions could say, oh, I just do this, just do that. And you could just say, no, thank you. I cannot take one more thing onto my plate. I will explode. Okay. So you have to be able to start to see where your boundaries are getting pushed against and how you can start to maintain. This is the way that I've talked about it, and I will continue to talk about it in the future. Is you have to maintain a buffer between yourself and the outside world. And what burnout does is it wears down. You can think that it's actually burning through your buffer with the outside world to the point where when you reach stage 4 and 5, there's nothing protecting you. There's no delay between the stimulus from the outside world and what you feel. So you're getting straight effects. It's like sticking your finger on a live wire and just getting shocked every little time that something happens. Okay.
So this is when you want to revisit your boundary practice also, right? Making sure that you have a good boundary practice, but also check with the barometer every morning and around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, because that's when that boundary gets a little thin and then your energy will tend to go down. So make sure that you're not using up your energy too much. And let's talk about a couple things that we can recommend for you. That being said, so I think it kind of triggers me. I mean, I don't know, I shouldn't use the word trigger so much. But it does bother me when people are like, oh, you just need to do a self-care. I don't know why I had to say it in that LA, accent here. But anyway, you get the point, right? It's like, you just need to do a bubble bath and light the candle. It's like, oh, give me a break. I don't even have the energy to like lift my head up, let alone wash my tub and take a bath in it. That just sounds so exhausting. So self-care, sometimes it just becomes like a noise that you don't want anymore. That becomes more of a burden. Okay. So instead of looking at like more self-care, you need to sign up for a massage. And it's like, I don't have time to go to massage. Are you kidding me? Like, just to drive to a massage therapist is exhausting. So, okay. So that's not going to work for someone like me. Okay. But what does work is having like the bookend practice that I always talk about. So making sure that you get 5 minutes of sunlight in the morning or a little bit longer. Okay. Making sure that you are getting that beautiful vitamin D in the morning, because that is going to help you to create a better circadian rhythm. That is such an important part when you're burnt out. Okay. When you're in a burnout, you will be wired and tired at 11 o'clock at night, and you'll be watching a late night show for no reason, no good reason whatsoever. Okay.
Who did that sound like?
Me. I did that last week. It was seriously midnight. My Wi-Fi goes off at 10:30. And I told Chris, could you go turn it back on, please? And I literally watched an hour and a half of dumb shows on late night. I don't even know. I wasn't even really watching it. I was just in that room with the TV. And it was horrific. Why am I doing that? Because I'm wired and tired. So if you were to tell me you need to go to bed early, you need to take a bubble bath, you just need to go get a massage, I'll be like, you know what, come over here. I'm going to punch you right now, because that's not what I want to do. Okay. I just wanted to watch a late night show. Okay.
Really quick. why don't
Let's come back to the chronological things. Let me get back to that first, and then I'll hand it over.
I'm going to say let's make sure we mention a couple of supplements, and then we'll
definitely. So make sure 5 minutes in the morning. Okay, sunlight, everyone. Okay, the bookend practice is some kind of like, I always go outside at night before I go to bed. I look at the moon, I look at the stars. I just kind of, because everybody is quiet in the neighborhood by that time. And I'm not talking midnight. It's like 10:30, 10:45 or so. I always go outside and I just walk around my front yard a little. And then I say goodnight to the trees and the grass and the plants and things like that. And then I go back in. So those are two of my very important bookends. I might not do anything else, but I certainly do those bookends because it tells me your day is over. You don't need to do any more. It's over. Let's get into the bedtime. Okay. So find your bookend practices that just tells you, okay, no more wired and tired here. Okay. And then a couple of the supplements that we really, really recommend. And there's one from Zorex that we really like. And the Zorex, you cannot buy it on Amazon or a full script or anything. And then please don't buy supplements from Amazon, by the way. But you can't buy them from full script, but you can actually contact Zorex. And then the information on how to contact Zorex is in our website under supplements.
I just posted it in the chat.
You need to contact them. You need to call them and then give them our practitioner's account number. Then you can start ordering from them directly. They make one of the best pharmaceutical grade supplements. The guy that started and he's an advisor for that Zorex company is my mentor as well. He's like 88 years old. He's been in this industry for decades. So, but one of the supplements that Zorex is creates, it's called Power Pill, and has really, really high dose of B vitamins. So you want to take one capsule in the morning, one capsule with lunch, breakfast and lunch. Don't take them after lunch. That can be really good for those of you that are just feeling like you're just run down and you can't get yourself up. Okay. And you're exhausted. Power Pill has been wonderful. You don't need to do it every day. In fact, for a lot of us sensitives, you could just do every other day or 2 times per week. That's about the right dose for Power Pill because it's super powerful. Okay. Quercetin, also sold from Zorex as well. We really like that one. You could get quercetin from Full Script. If you sign up under the supplements and go to Full Script under Breathe Inc., which is our company, you get 10% off as well. So you might want to do that. But quercetin can be really good for those of you that have diabetic tendencies, insulin resistance. You might have blood sugar that goes up and down. Quercetin has been shown not just for antiviral, and it's great for immune system. It's a transporter of the zinc, but it's also great for your blood sugar regulations, and particularly for people with diabetic tendencies. Okay. And there's another one, you could get it from Full Script, and it's from Biotics, and Chris is going to put the name. It's Bio dash, so BIO dash glycozyme is GLYCOZYM as in Mary E Forte. Bioglycozyme Forte has glandular support to balance your blood sugar, has great amount of B vitamins as well. It's kind of a multi, but you can take them 2 with breakfast and 2 with lunch. And you can do that every other day. Feels much better for this community than doing it every day. So you can do maybe one day you could do morning and the next day you do lunch. Things like that will be okay too. But it's got lots of great minerals, lots of vitamins in there, and the glandular help so that you can build up your endocrine system as well. So your adrenals, your thyroids, and then, all kinds of areas in your body that requires a little bit of glandular support. So that can be really good.
Let me just say, we'll go into this in more detail later down the road. As I said, we're working on a program right now that will get at the connections between stress and sleep, because this one is about balancing out your blood sugar levels. And that's one of the biggest things that gets disrupted when you fall into these burnout patterns. So we'll talk more about that down the road. But in the meantime, these are things that you can start to benefit from in the short term. So I just wanted to say quickly too, I put the link in there a couple of times. And Tara, thank you for the comment. If you're in the UK, you can also visit the supplement link on our website. And there are instructions there for how you can also order the high quality practitioner-grade supplements in the UK. And they also have free shipping for orders within the UK from our source there.
And then you get 10% off there too.
Yes, correct.
Set it up to make sure you get 10% off there too. So.
Quick thing, I want to.
I think focus on the B vitamins, everyone. B vitamins. Okay. Higher the stress, the B vitamins get sucked out. Okay. So that is the beginning stage. There's a lot more that we can talk about, but the B vitamins are something that your adrenals, like, they suck up and they don't share. Adrenals are very much a B vitamin like hoarders. Okay. So they don't share. So you need to put a little bit more B vitamins back into your system. B1, B2, B3, B5, B6, B12. Okay. Those are all very, very important. Okay.
So as we wrap up for today, I'm going to put up another link here. Some of you may have already downloaded this. If you've been following the talks that Masami and I have been giving over the last, month maybe, we've been talking more about burnout because it's such a timely, it's always timely. And it's even more timely when events in the world are becoming overburdening on us, when we have people around us that are struggling with mental health, when we're struggling with our own mental health and physical health. All of these things accumulate. And so this is something that's a really important topic to understand. And if you have already visited, I gave a talk with Courtney Parkinson, where I talked about these stages of burnout to some extent, but I'm sharing the link here to the PDF. If you have not gotten it, you can download it, and you just need to sign up for our list. I think probably most of you here, probably everyone here is already on the list, but you can still get the PDF if you didn't get a chance to download it before. So that's there. And then I just have a couple of other announcements. And while I'm giving these, Masami, if you could pull up the link for Dr. Christine's podcast, because I closed my email.
And could I just answer one question for leaky gut? So Maria asked about she's having some leaky gut issues. My recommendation is to restore that gut first, right? So I put it in the chat there. From Full Script, you can either get GI Restore or GI, I'll put Restore twice, I'm sorry, Resolve.
I'll take that.
GI Restore or GI Resolve. Those are very similar and formulated, and you just do 1 scoop before going to bed. And that's very helpful for a leaky gut, small intestinal, kind of inflammatory conditions. Okay.
Yeah. And Susanna asked, how do you take quercetin? It's usually just a capsule. You can just take it on an empty stomach or with food.
And then we went over a huge amount of information on quercetin in last November, 2021's November call. In conjunction with we did a lot of things around COVID. So quercetin, we talked about it for November Monday call. So maybe take a look at one of those Monday calls. Yeah.
So Masami's going to put up a link to her most recent interview with Dr. Christine Schaffner. And I just wanted to say this was it was an outstanding interview. And I, of course, am I biased? Yes. But I also have to say that I hear everything that Masami does, both in the foreground and the background, at every stage. And so I just want to say that if you've been following Masami for a while and listening to her, you're really going to hear how she's growing her message and her perspective through all the work that we do together also, including all of you here. So I highly encourage you to go and listen to that podcast. And one other thing I'd like to request from everybody is that, one, if you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do that. Okay. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And you can find the link to that on our homepage. And the second thing is, anytime if you listen to a video, please give us a like. It's just the world we live in. It's all algorithm driven. And so not only does it help us get noticed when you give us a thumbs up and you join our list, but it also helps people who have similar interests find what we're posting up there. So if you could help us get the word out on that, that would be great. And Linda, thank you for that feedback. Also, Sue, podcast with Dr. Christine was so good. And Linda says Masami's interview with Dr. Christine was excellent. One of her best interviews on the liver, gallbladder, and kidneys. And oh, thanks, Sue. She said, my interview with Courtney was great. Okay. So, and Takako-san, thank you for also listening and saying that Dr. Schaffner's interview with Masami was fantastic. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. And, everyone, when you're in the stage 4 or 5 burnout, which I was kind of dipping into it again. And I just want to tell you, there was a comment early on that this person said she remembers being in a stage 5 several times in the past. What happens is your brain begins to carve out the same pathways in your brain. And once you've hit stage 5 multiple times, likelihood of you getting to stage 5 is high again. Okay. You can slip into that mode very easily. So please be aware of that, because what happened was I had been pushing myself a lot. And by the time I did the interview with her at the end of May, I was so wiped out. I got on the call and she said, how are you doing? And I just honestly answered it. I said to her, I am so exhausted. I hope I'm going to do an okay job, And we both kind of leaned on each other. If you know Dr. Christine Schaffner, she does a lot of work as well. So we both just felt exhausted. And I knew that I was going into that interview at around stage 4 or 5. I'm sure of it. So after my interview, what happened was I went into full-on self-criticism. I couldn't sleep for 2 days because I was criticizing myself all night. That was a horrible interview. I did not do a good job. What have I said? I don't even remember what I said anymore, because I think I was in a different zone, to be honest with you. That's why I didn't remember. But because I didn't remember, I was criticizing myself left and right. Chris saw it, and I started to feel it in my entire body. So what I ended up doing last weekend to really work with my own body, which we will share this more with you, is that I did a trauma release exercise, TRE. And if those of you that don't know what TRE, you might want to Google it. Okay. But TRE, trauma releasing exercises, that's what I ended up doing. And I had to shake my body and release the tension that I was holding in my psoas. And I realized that how much I had been pushing myself, and that came to a head after that interview. And after I released it out of my body, I actually did multiple days of that. And then I felt much, much better. I felt like I came back to my body. So I'm just sharing this with you, that when you start to do criticism that just won't go away, you start analyzing yourself over and over throughout the night, and it won't go away after 24 hours of, after the event, and you're still doing it 72 hours later. Now that stress is not leaving you till you release it out of your psoas. Okay. So you need to look at exercises like TRE to move it out of your system, so that you don't go down into burnout 5 stage. And that was on me. I did it to myself. Okay. But I knew how to stop it. But I just wanted you to know that from my own experience, what happened in the last couple of weeks. Yeah. And I know we've kept you guys long today, so we will wrap up. Do you have anything else, Chris, you want to add? Thank you, everybody, for all your awesome comments. I see you, I read them. And then, it's just tough. There's just so much going on in our lives. Somebody's taking care of I just want to read this, Deborah. I know you just need to be heard here. So I'm just going to read what you said. I don't have solutions, but I just want you to know that I read your comment. It says, my brother just over a month ago attempted to end his life. My attempt to support him in ways I was able prior to and during his stay in hospital and afterwards, and also support our 93-year-old mother, took a toll on my own health and self-care. I overextended my capacities to be helpful and even started becoming resentful. As you say, compassion fatigue. Yes, I love going to the park, green space to regenerate. Yeah, so Deborah, I just wanted to read that because when you are being heard, the shift can happen, right? I said that in Dr. Schaffner's interview as well, but Rachel Naomi Remen says, everybody is a story, right? We all carry stories, but we don't get a chance to share it. We don't get a group like this that we can come together and say, I've been stressed. I have not been heard. I have been carrying this on my own. So I just wanted to make sure I read that. And I want to thank all of you for listening to us too. And my last couple of weeks of total stress that I went into a spiral that was down. It was like a drain that was just spiraling down and down and down. I did go down there. But there are ways, if you can learn some ways to release it out of your body, sunshine in the moonlight at night, those can be a very helpful start. And know that if you just have no energy to even do a self-care, it's okay. You need to say to yourself, I don't have the energy to even do a self-care. And so be it. And it's okay too. Okay. But know that we are all stories. Please find people in your circles, your loved ones, your friends and family that would sit down and hear you. You need to be heard. That is the first stage of healing. We're not hearing each other, everyone. We're not acknowledging that we're all exhausted. How could you not be? Unless you lived under some kind of a stone or a rock or a cave, you didn't come out for the last 3 years from this, into the world. How could you not be exhausted? Okay. And so let's just acknowledge that for each other right now. Yeah.
Just on that same note, and it's a little bit like what I said earlier, if you're alone, sometimes we just don't have the energy to provide a fix. Even if you're in a role or if you've historically been the fixer for the people around you. So when that happens, we have to start with what we can do. And sometimes all we can do is just be with somebody else. Just sit with them. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to do anything. Even just your presence, even if in that presence, you're just saying, I don't know. I don't have an answer. You don't have to say it out loud even, but just being with somebody, being with yourself, and just allow that to happen without trying to make something else be better or changed or fixed. Even that is a step toward healing. Okay, so just remember that in the absence of any other things that you can do, that's something that I think almost any of us can do, even when we're feeling very low, is we can just be in the presence of somebody else and allow that to pass through us. So thank you, everyone. Thank
you. Yeah, for being here and then acknowledging. And I feel like I was witnessed today. So thank you for that too. Yeah. Not I feel like I do. I feel that I was witnessed. So thank you. And let's keep this going. We will be here. Okay. And once a month we will show up, but who knows? We might show up again this month and we will send out an email. But we're going to be sticking with this topic a little bit longer about the burnout, because there's so much to cover and talk about. But just having a sharing space like this, that we're reading each other's chats, it's been very, very helpful. So let's take a moment. Let's ground yourselves, because there's been a lot of vulnerable sharing as well, that you hold space for one another. And then know that there's somebody else in this group that is holding the space for you right now. Okay, so you can let go a little bit and know that somebody else is holding the space for you. Yeah. And then check in with your barometer for a moment. And I'm hoping that it changed a little bit by showing up today and having others hold a space for you. And hands together at the heart center. Namaste, everyone. I'll see you soon.